to secure a promotion. My father had me pursue the capital's most aloof and noble gentleman. I spent over half a year exhausting every effort and finally managed to pull the unattainable Bailey Jing down to earth. But just a few days later, I was told that I had targeted the wrong person. The target I was actually supposed to approach was his close friend. What did you say? Repeat that again. The master sent word,
saying you sought out the wrong person, my lady. The target is not young Master Bailey, but heir apparent Helian.
After a long silence, I slowly took off the hairpin from my hair, the very one I had cherished like a treasure. Just this morning, my hands and feet felt ice cold, and a surge of anger rushed to my head. My father once said that years ago he had rescued a nobleman from the capital. During their conversation, that nobleman mentioned he had an exceptionally handsome and talented son. This person had a double character surname, and his family was highly prominent in the capital, known to every household. Furthermore, he was the only son in the household. Therefore, after doing some calculations, my father sent me here to find a way to win this noble young master's favor. That young master was said to be brilliantly talented and exceptionally handsome. My father also hoped to use this marriage alliance to pave the way for his official career, climbing the ranks rapidly from then on. Initially, I was unwilling, but my heartless father used my biological mother to threaten me. My mother was his fifth concubine. Normally, I could only address her as Aunt Sun. My mother was beautiful, yet she was treated as goods by her own father and sold to my heartless father. My father threatened that if I did not comply, he would sell my mother into slavery and then marry me off to the neighbor, Wang the Hunchback, as a concubine. My birth mother, just for a few bites of food, had to flatter the first wife. To give me the chance to study and learn etiquette, she even humbled herself before my father. I was clearly the flesh of her womb, yet I had to call someone else mother. I would often hide in the shadows and steal glances at her. She would always take out the clothes and bedding from my childhood, caressing them over and over and smoothing them out again and again. If she didn't have me to hold on to in her heart, I'm afraid she wouldn't have survived long ago. My mother once said that in the future, I only needed to find a well-off family and be a properly wedded first wife, and that I shouldn't worry about her anymore. But how could I really just leave her to her fate? No matter what price I have to pay, I must ensure that my mother can live a peaceful and comfortable life for the rest of her days. Therefore, I made up my mind, packed some simple luggage, and came to the capital under the pretext of recovering from an illness. Coming with me was my highly resourceful maid, Zhao Zhao. Just this morning, Zhao Zhao, as if holding a priceless treasure, presented a jade hairpin to me. Her eyes were red with excitement, and her voice was trembling.
Miss, you have spent so much effort planning day and night to seduce, oh no, to pursue Lord Bailey Jing. Now, we have finally taken the first step to success.
My heart was also filled with turbulent emotions. I turned the jade hairpin over and over in my hand to examine it, and tried it against my hair repeatedly. I couldn't help but marvel that he was indeed a young master of a noble family. He was truly generous. This hairpin was worth at least 300 taels of silver. For 8 whole months, I had racked my brains to arrange accidental encounters, and even hired people to stage an assassination attempt, so that Bailey Jing could come to my rescue, deliberately trying to get close to him. I had finally received a token of his affection, but this precious hairpin, I hadn't even held it long enough to warm it up in my hands, and now you're telling me I've been targeting the wrong person this whole time? I shut myself in my room for 3 consecutive days. Even the people sent by Bailey Jing to check on me were heartlessly turned away at my door. That so-called heir apparent Helian is none other than Bailey Jing's closest friend, Helian Jean of the Prince of Chun's manor. His status and position are even more prominent than those of Bailey Jing, the Chancellor's son. This man has nothing but a handsome face, but at his core, he is an absolute playboy. Causing trouble and frequenting brothels are everyday matters for him. As for the scholarly arts of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, as well as poetry and literature, he knows absolutely nothing. He is a far cry from the talented young gentleman my father spoke of, and even further from being an elegant and gentle noble lord. Therefore, I never dreamed that my target would be him. He even mocked me in front of Bailey Jing, saying that a foreign woman like me was daydreaming of climbing the social ladder, and that I should look at how embarrassing my clingy behavior was. At that time, to maintain a good image in Bailey Jing's heart, I forced myself to swallow my anger. Afterward, I deliberately found an opportunity to corner him and splashed a whole bucket of slops onto his carriage. As luck would have it, I was caught red-handed by him. Naturally, a fierce war of words was inevitable. We aired out every single piece of dirty laundry we had on each other. From then on, whenever we crossed paths, sparks would fly, with neither of us willing to back down an inch. Only in front of Bailey Jing would there be a semblance of peace between us. I had to play the part of a sweet, gentle lady before Bailey Jing, while Bailey Jing had been entrusted by Prince Chun to keep his behavior in check. Neither of us dared to easily reveal our true colors. He and I were simply born to be rivals. In public and in private, we wore two completely different faces. But now, they are telling me the person I had to seduce was actually him. My heart instantly turned to ice. I quickly sent a messenger on horseback to my father, asking if I could target someone else, but he sent back a reply via urgent courier. No way. Not only was there no room for negotiation, but he also gave me a strict deadline, ordering me to get it done within 3 months. This was because I would turn 18 in 3 months. Daughters of ordinary families are betrothed by 15 or 16. At my age, I was already considered late. If I delayed any longer, I would become an old maid. To put it another way, even if Bailey Jing had feelings for me without that debt of gratitude as leverage, how could the Prime Minister ever agree to let me marry into his family? Besides, even if Bailey Jing truly loved me without that gratitude to rely on, how could the Prime Minister allow me to cross his threshold, let alone the position of primary wife? I would probably have to struggle just to secure a place as a concubine. Even if I were lucky enough to become his concubine, why would the Prime Minister ever help promote a concubine's maiden family? Just as my mind was in a chaotic tangle, Zhao Zhao burst in holding her planning notebook, her eyes shining brightly. She looked at me listless and slumped on the bed.
My lady, I have analyzed and studied the situation. Although that Lord Hellion behaves in such a manner, deep down, he is completely inexperienced in love. To deal with him, we cannot use the slow boil method like we did with Lord Bailey. We must strike and succeed in one go.
Sporting dark circles under my eyes, I slowly forced a grin. How do we strike and succeed in one go? By making sure he can never have heirs in this lifetime and can never marry a wife. And then, hee. Zhao Zhao clapped her hands together. We go straight to him and confess our feelings. The smile on my face instantly froze. Wait, is there something wrong with your head? Normally, Hellion Jean and I wish nothing more than for the other to meet a vicious dog when going out, or to choke on a fishbone while dining. Yet you want me to rush up to him and profess my love? My lips twitched slightly. I simply pulled the blanket over my head, out of sight, out of mind. That being said, I eventually succumbed to my father's coercion and Zhao Zhao's relentless encouragement. I chose a dark night with a howling wind to wait for Hellion Jean near the establishment he frequently visited.
Miss, now is the time. Hurry, go.
Just as Hellion Jean poked half his head out, I forcefully shoved him back in.
Yueluo, is there something wrong with your eyes? This is the carriage of the Prince of Chun's estate, not the carriage of your precious Lord Bailey.
Suppressing my anger, I gently bit my lower lip. Tears welled up in my eyes. My brows knitted slightly as I put on a pitiful and endearing look. Heir apparent. Actually, the one Yueluo truly loves is you.
Yueluo, how could you come up with such a malicious scheme?
We were extremely close to each other. I could clearly see his flawless skin, as well as the look in his eyes that seemed to view me as a lunatic. Heir apparent. In truth, from the very first time we met, Yueluo was already deeply infatuated with you. Since then, I have thought of you day and night. Everything I did was solely to win your attention. I originally thought that by acting that way, I could make you look back at me for even a brief moment. But the deeper my feelings grew, and the stronger my love became, the more I could no longer bear to continue interacting with you in such a hostile manner. Today, I must lay everything bare. and tell you the deepest thoughts in my heart. I do not dare to hope for a response from you, heir apparent. I only hope that you could give Yueluo a chance to stay by your side.
Halfway through my speech,
I really couldn't make up any more of it because Jin's expression had completely collapsed. With a look of horror, he pushed me away.
Yueluo, have you been possessed by some unclean spirit?
I knew Zhao Zhao's method couldn't be trusted. If her tactics hadn't actually worked when she was pursuing Bailey Jing before, I would never have agreed to such a shocking and outrageous plan. It seems I have no choice but to use Plan B. According to Zhao Zhao, this trick is a foolproof ultimate move that will definitely win Jin over in one go. My gaze slowly drifted downward, landing on his thin, rosy lips. My throat swallowed involuntarily. Then, thinking of my mother's frail, pale face, I steeled my heart. Anyway, no matter how I look at it, I'm not the one losing out. Seizing the right moment, I pressed forward, forcing Jin into the corner of the carriage. I stretched my arms as wide as I could, struggling to trap him within them. Perhaps it was just my imagination, but I felt Jin's body seem to quietly slide down a bit, bringing my eyes exactly level with his. If I just leaned in a little further, I could easily steal a kiss.
You?
Don't make a sound. Inside the prince's manor, the head steward of Prince Chun's manor questioned me with a deep frown.
My lady, just what kind of deadly poison did you give our heir?
Heaven is my witness. I am innocent. I didn't even touch him. Just when we were barely a finger's width apart, he fainted without warning. In my panic, I even slapped him, but I still couldn't wake him up. But that servant refused to listen to my explanation and just kept shouting loudly, insisting that I had poisoned their heir apparent with my mouth. It was utterly absurd. The butler straightened his back and said with a grim face,
If you still refuse to confess, young lady, once our prince returns to the manor, the questioning won't be this polite.
What could I say? Was I supposed to admit that I had intended to seduce him, but failed, and instead ended up taking the blame for something out of the blue? Forget it. As the saying goes, a wise person knows when to back down. I shifted my knees, which had already gone numb from kneeling, letting the wind blow my eyes red, and looked at the righteous-looking butler. Mr. Butler, I am just a simple girl from the countryside. How could I ever have the courage to poison the heir apparent? I have a frail and sickly mother at home, and young, innocent siblings below me. Even if I were given 100 times more courage, I wouldn't dare do such a thing. If there is anyone to blame, it is only that the heir apparent is far too handsome, elegant, and extraordinarily charming. At first sight, I was completely infatuated and lost all self-control. That is why I boldly climbed into his carriage, wishing to get a little closer to him. As for the poisoning, I truly know absolutely nothing about it.
Oh, lost all self-control?
Lord Bailey.
What brings you here?
Is she the one who poisoned the heir apparent?
His voice carried a chilling coldness. Others only thought he was expressing outrage on Jin's behalf, but as for me, I just wanted to burst into tears. Over the past few days, Bailey Jing had sent people to look for me. I had rejected them all on the pretext of being unwell. Yet here I was, appearing in this place today. And those words I just said, he must have heard them all as well.
Lift your head.
Summoning my courage, I defended myself. Young Master Bailey, I really didn't poison him. Abandoning someone or being unfaithful and behaving like a loose woman would at most earn me some public condemnation. But poisoning the prince's heir is a crime punishable by beheading. I certainly know which is the lesser of two evils. Bailey Jing looked down at me from his height, his gaze distant, and indifferent, tinged with a hint of scrutiny. My heart tightened. A look like this, I hadn't seen it from him in a very long time. My very first meeting with Bailey Jing was at a spring banquet. I had relied on my connection with Song Qingya, the daughter of my father's old friend, just to sneak my way in. He sat alone in a seat of honor, managing the order of the banquet, seeming worlds apart from the noisy crowd around him. When young ladies deliberately approached to strike up a conversation, he would use that same distant and cold gaze to keep them at a great distance compared to those young masters who couldn't tear their eyes away the moment they saw a lady. He was completely different. He truly was a man of pure heart and few desires, focusing solely on his duties. I thought to myself, if not for my father's arrangements, I, too, would have fallen for such a man. But what was the use of mere affection? Hexian was 300 miles away from the capital, where my frail and sickly birth mother was waiting for me. My current food, clothing, shelter, and transportation, including the residence purchased in the west of the city, were all paid for with my father's money. If I didn't do as he commanded, my mother's weak body would certainly not survive my father's torment. Bailey Jing said nothing more. Instead, he reached out, took hold of my wrist, and helped me to my feet. I swallowed hard. The sleepless night had left my head groggy, yet I didn't dare completely lean on Bailey Jing. My footsteps faltered, and I fell quite deliberately into his arms. Bailey Jing lowered his eyes, the corner of his mouth curving into a cold, emotionless smile.
You are quite open-minded, my lady, throwing yourself into anyone's arms.
No, it's not like that. Please let me explain. If they were ugly, I wouldn't be quite so open-minded. Of course, I didn't dare say those words out loud. Instead, I quickly backed out of his embrace. Young Master Bailey, how is the heir? What is his condition? Only if Hellion Jean is safe and sound. Only if Hellion Jean is safe and sound can my innocence be proven. As the saying goes, where there is life, there is hope. When it comes to matters of life and death, everything else is trivial.
You didn't come to see me these past few days. Is this what you've been so busy with these past few days instead of coming to see me?
I shrank my neck, avoiding his gaze, shrinking back like a coward. But seeing that Bailey Jing was still in the mood to discuss this with me, Hellion Jin's life was likely not in danger. Stealing my resolve, I decided to just speak frankly. Young Master Bailey, everything before was a misunderstanding. It was all my fault. Whether you wish to beat me or scold me, I will have absolutely no complaints, as long as it eases your displeasure, young master.
It's a misunderstanding.
Bai Lijing's voice betrayed no emotion, as if he were carefully chewing over the meaning of those words.
Does the misunderstanding you speak of, my lady, refer to your feigning illness to avoid me these past few days, or to everything that has passed between us?
In his deep eyes, I saw a tiny reflection of myself. That reflection seemed to harbor some deeply suppressed emotion. Both. All of them. I steadied my breathing, waiting with a heart full of guilt for the punishment he was about to hand down. The surroundings fell silent for a long time. Bailey Jing slowly raised his hand. I closed my eyes tightly out of instinct, bracing myself for the slap I expected to come. In the upper left corner of the panel, a slight tickle brushed past my ear. It turned out to be his warm fingertips, gently tucking a stray lock of my hair behind my ear. His voice was as gentle as ever.
Wait for me to come back and get you.
Get me? What does that mean? I opened my eyes in astonishment, but his hand slid down to cup the back of my neck, pulling me forward. My head was buried straight into his chest. His strong, powerful heartbeat was clearly audible. I could even feel the firm contours of his chest. Stop right there. I can't think about this anymore. Bailey Jing has always strictly observed etiquette. This was the very first time he had ever made such an intimate gesture toward me. No matter how thick-skinned I was, I couldn't help but feel my cheeks burning hot, my heart pounding like a drum. After just a brief moment, he let go of me, returning to his usual aloof, otherworldly demeanor. Only deep in his eyes, there was an extra touch of tenderness tinged with affection. My heart felt as if it had been struck by a heavy blow. I stared at him blankly, forgetting for a moment what I should say. Shouldn't he be angry? Because I was suspected of poisoning him. After Bailey Jing left, I was locked in the woodshed of Prince Chun's manor. Just when I was about to faint from hunger, he Lianjin arrived. He walked into the woodshed alone, his face pale as he lifted me up from the ground and handed me a bowl of plain congee. I didn't dare reach out to take it. Who knew if he was trying to take this opportunity to seek revenge on me? He wasn't in a hurry either. He only said sarcastically,
If you starve to death, how will you pursue this heir apparent?
I sat up abruptly from my near-death state, looking at him with utter bewilderment. Aside from my father, Zhao Zhao, and myself, no fourth person knew about this matter. How did he find out? He swirled the porridge bowl in his hand, a meaningful smile playing on his lips.
Are you truly planning to pursue this heir apparent?
He was bluffing me,
completely ignoring my
gradually collapsing expression. He continued,
This heir apparent knows you didn't poison the food.
We shall let this matter slide, considering you suffered these past few days for nothing. This heir apparent will reluctantly give you a chance. Move into the prince's manor for the next few days and be a study companion to this heir apparent. To think such a good thing would happen. As his study companion, I would bound to see him every single day. Wouldn't that give me many great opportunities to be alone with him? What did this bit of grievance matter? It wasn't even worth mentioning. Without any hesitation, I took the bowl of white porridge and gulped it down in a few mouthfuls. Full of anticipation, I asked, When can I move in?
So impatient. It seems you don't have much sincerity toward Jing either.
I spoke against my conscience. I only have the heir apparent in my heart. How could romantic feelings be more important than my life? And how could they be more important than my aunt? Lianjin's expression turned peculiar. For once, he didn't mock me further, but instead asked a strange question.
You like this heir apparent? How will you prove it?
It was only natural for him to have doubts. After all, I used to always revolve around Bailey Jing and was as incompatible as fire and water with him. Even when he was present, the pastries and tea I sent over never had a share for him. I straightened my body under his bewildered gaze. I finished the unfinished business from a carriage. Once it was done, I continued to express my feelings, feigning shyness. Heir apparent. These are my true feelings. Would you be willing to give me a chance? After a long while, the bowl in his hand wobbled slightly as he spoke, sounding somewhat unsure.
You? Are you truly not lying to me?
It is absolutely true. Zhao Zhao was indeed right. Although Lianjin often frequented brothels and courtesan houses, he had probably never even held a girl's hand. Looking at it this way, seducing Lianjin was much easier than seducing Bailey Jing. It made sacrificing my charms worthwhile, just to complete the mission within 3 months. When I returned home, I found a crowd of curious neighbors gathered outside the house. My intuition told me something was wrong. Sure enough, 2 aunties were already whispering to each other nearby.
Didn't Miss Lee say she came here to recuperate from an illness? Where are these people taking her?
Could she be going to serve some noble as a?
Shh. Don't talk nonsense.
How? Is it nonsense?
Miss Lee is so beautiful, like a person stepped right out of a painting. If I were a man. What nonsense are you all talking about?
Hearing this, Auntie Lu and the others shut their mouths in unison and took a few steps back, which happened to expose me hiding behind the crowd.
Miss, you're finally back.
The moment Zhao Zhao saw me, her little face instantly fell, and 2 teardrops rolled down right away. I patted her shoulder. Haven't seen you for a few days, and you've grown a bit sturdier. Hearing the commotion, the people inside the house also walked out. Leading them was a man dressed as a guard.
Miss Lee, please come in.
They certainly made themselves at home, but I felt a sense of unease. This man looked somewhat familiar. The few times I had pretended to run into Bailey Jing, he had been right by his side. I think his name was Jisoo. As Zhao Zhao and I stepped into the house, Jisoo spoke again.
Miss Lee, our master asked me to inquire. Do you plan to go to the Prince of Chun's manor or to the Bailey manor?
My footsteps suddenly froze. I should have known things were going south. I had been feeling anxious about Bailey Jing's mention of picking me up, and my premonition had come true. I did feel guilty toward him, but my mission target was Lianjin after all. I hesitated for a long moment before asking in a low voice, May I ask, why does young Master Bailey want me to go to his manor? What is this about?
This subordinate is only acting on orders and does not know the master's specific intentions.
Just then, Zhao Zhao whispered in my ear,
Miss, You've only just abandoned him. If you go there now, there will surely be trouble waiting for you. Let's stick to our original plan.
I couldn't help but recall what Bailey Jing had said back at the Prince of Chun's manor. My resolve began to waver. How about we should check out the Bailey Manor first, and go back later?
Yueluo.
His complexion looked much better than before, but his gaze was far from friendly, even carrying a hint of resentment.
This heir apparent told you to pack your bags and move into the manor. Half the day has already passed. Where on earth have you been?
Ever since I kissed Hellion Jean, he has become a bit strange, always carrying a sort of awkward possessiveness.
Miss, this is a golden opportunity delivered right to our door. You can take this chance to win him over.
Zhao Zhao urged me, her eyes shining with excitement. Clearly, she had already filled in the blanks herself about my romantic life during those few days at the prince's manor. Although Bailey Jing had given me a hairpin, he had never actually said he fancied me from beginning to end, and I had never personally confessed my feelings to him either. So moving on to someone else like this probably shouldn't be considered too terrible, right? I gave a forced laugh, trying to find a convenient excuse for myself, and turn around to head back into the room. Completing the mission was still the priority. But the moment I pushed the door open, I noticed that from an angle hidden from the crowd behind me, a figure in green was standing abruptly behind the door.
Miss, I haven't gone in yet.
I can manage by myself. You should go pack your things too. Lord Bailey, are you looking for me? His expression gradually returned to calm as he took slow steps toward me. With every step he took forward, my heart grew a bit more anxious, and I even felt a sudden urge to bolt out the door. But I didn't dare. Hellion Jean was still just outside the door. Once I walked out of this room, not only would I have no way to explain myself to Bailey Jing, but Hellion Jean would certainly not tolerate me either. And my father would surely take his anger out on Aunt Sun first. Over these past 8 months, I had spent so much of his money. My own end would definitely not be any better.
Miss Lee. The heir's lips and my lips. Which look better? Look better.
I was so stunned by his sudden question, was so shocked that my mind went completely blank. Even though his tone betrayed no emotion, I felt my scalp go numb. Bailey Jing is angry. Before I could even recover from the shock, he had already walked right up to me. There were only 2 fists of distance between us. He looked down at me, but his gaze fell upon my lips. I was so nervous that cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Could he already know what happened today? I wanted to lower my head. I wanted to escape, but before I could speak, my chin was clamped by a pair of ice-cold fingers. With a slight nudge of force from Bailey Jing, I was forced to raise my head and lock eyes with him. That burning and somewhat fierce gaze was enough to make my knees go weak with fear, but he didn't seem satisfied yet. He lowered his head as I frantically tried to look away. Our breaths mingled together, leaving barely any distance between our lips. I completely chickened out, not daring to move an inch. At the same time, I silently recited the heart-clearing mantra my aunt often chanted 3 times in my head. Kissing Hellion Jean was done with the mindset of completing a task, but facing Bailey Jing, my heart was like a trapped beast, thrashing wildly. Even the heart-clearing mantra couldn't do a single thing. In the silent air, I could hear his breathing, and I could feel his strong, powerful heartbeat, just like mine. It was in complete disarray. Was this still the same person who once accidentally touched my finger and apologized repeatedly, Bailey Jing? I felt as if I were watching a flawless white camellia, being stained inch by the dust of the mortal world. No, perhaps I should say, it was exposing the darkness hidden deep within the heart of the flower. The soft and cold sensation on my lips rushed straight to my brain and heart. Immediately after came his fierce and a vengeful invasion. This was completely different from Hellion Jin's fleeting touch. It was a tangible, intense sensation. Terrified, I couldn't help but retreat. Taking advantage of the step back, I managed to break free from his grasp. When our eyes met again, I could clearly see in his eyes an undisguised possessiveness and a silent declaration. Suddenly, a surge of courage came over me, and I asked him directly, "Young Master Bailey, do you like me?" Bailey Jing's breath caught slightly, but he did not answer my question. Steadying my nerves, I immediately followed up with another question. "Then, can you marry me as your official wife?" From the look of it, the answer was no. For a noble family like the Bailey clan, marrying the concubine-born daughter of a low-ranking provincial official as the official wife was absolutely out of the question. After all, it wasn't his father that my father had saved. Still unwilling to give up, I pressed further. "What about as a concubine?" He paused and answered with utmost seriousness,
I do not take concubines.
Since that was the case, what else was there to say? In just a brief moment, Bailey Jing restored his usual polite and proper demeanor, as if his loss of composure just now had been a mere illusion.
Jean hasn't promised you the position of official wife either.
His voice was slightly low and raspy, seemingly questioning me. Hellion Jean didn't intend to marry me as his official wife either, so why did I choose him of all people? I smiled without saying a word, and the little guilt I had felt in my heart mostly dissipated. Bailey Jing's gaze grew deeper. Just as he was about to say something more, a voice suddenly came from outside the door.
Yueluo, have you finished packing yet?
Hellion Jean knocked on the door from outside, seemingly intending to push the door open and enter. A wave of panic hit me, and without time to bicker with Bailey Jing any further, I quickly stepped forward and pulled him behind the screen. A moment later, that thoughtless fellow, Hellion Jean indeed, pushed the door open and walked in. My mind went blank, and I blurted out an incredibly clumsy excuse. I'm changing my clothes. Don't come over." Hellion Jean paused for a long while before shifting his steps and backing up to the door.
"Then this heir will wait for you right here."
My mind instantly filled with question marks. A living hell would probably look just like this. I looked down at the dress I was wearing, then cautiously raised my eyes to look at the man standing before me with a perfectly calm expression. Seeing me look at him, a slight change finally appeared on Bailey Jing's face. He parted his lips without making a sound, but I understood his lip movement. He said,
"Let me help you."
Before I could even shake my head, my waistband loosened. Bailey Jing's eyes grew dark and unreadable as he pressed closer to me step by step. Yet I dared not make a sound, nor did I dare run out, and I certainly did not dare let Hellion Jean know of his presence.
"So Lady Li likes it this way?"
He whispered close to my ear. That upright and clear voice of his was completely at odds with the words he was speaking, carrying a tingling, seductive quality. A hand, lingering like a vine, wrapped around my waist. I still remembered one time when I invited Bailey Jing to the outskirts to admire the peach blossoms. Under the pretense of picking flowers, I touched his fingertips. His expression shifted, and he hastily withdrew his hand, even apologizing to me in a highly proper manner. He truly was a well-mannered gentleman.
But what about now?
I looked up at him in a panic. I didn't dare make any big movements, lest I arouse Hellion Jin's suspicion. That face of his remained calm and undisturbed, except that the corners of his eyes curved up slightly, carrying a hint of deliberate intent, seemingly quite satisfied with my reaction. Before my anger could flare up, the screen clattered to the ground. The sound wasn't loud, but to my ears it was deafening.
"Bailey Jing, what are you doing here?"
And here I was wondering who it was.
Only 2 words remained in my mind.
I'm doomed.
I am completely doomed this time.
The person you should be asking is not me, but her.
Bailey Jing pushed me forward with nonchalance. To be honest, this move of his was rather unfair. To think I used to praise him for being gentle and considerate. Yueluo also came to his senses, staring at me with burning eyes as he said,
Yueluo, speak.
If I could, I really wanted to dig a hole and bury myself on the spot. That.
He.
Exactly. That.
Untie your tongue before you speak.
Yueluo glared at me, gnashing his teeth in anger. I was so frightened by him that my spirit withered. How on earth was I to explain this? Should I say I played fast and loose with his feelings, and that's why he came to seek revenge? Or should I say he forced a kiss on me just now? Or perhaps I hid him away because I was afraid of being discovered by Yueluo? Bailey Jing reached out to support my weak legs and said in a gentle voice,
Miss Lee, between you and me, there is nothing shameful between us. There is no need to be so flustered.
I was absolutely certain that Bailey Jing was doing this purely out of revenge. Just as I was about to speak up and refute him, I saw him lower his eyes and look at my lips with an ambiguous gaze. Yueluo was no fool. He had already picked up on the clues. Instantly, his eyes turned red with anger, and he pointed at me, shouting in rage,
Yueluo.
You liar! I was momentarily speechless. I indeed was a liar, and I had no way to defend myself.
Does the heir still want this study companion?
I also wanted to know the answer, so I looked up and gazed at Yueluo with anticipation. Yueluo did not answer. He simply turned around and ran out without looking back. My heart instantly sank to the bottom. 1,000 words were choked in my throat, and I couldn't utter a single syllable. Now things were really bad. The ship had capsized. Everything was ruined. Bailey Jing did not leave. I looked at him, my heart filled with a complex mix of emotions.
Outsiders all say that you would use any means to cling to the powerful. In the upper left corner of the panel, I have never once doubted your sincerity. When you closed your doors and refused to see me, I originally thought I had done something to displease you. I wanted to visit you, yet I did not dare to intrude until you climbed onto the heir's carriage and appeared at the prince's manor. Even then, what I thought of was still how to clear your name. But what about you? You only have the heir in your heart. Is that so?
Without his previous retaliatory and absurd behavior, only disappointment and detachment remained in Bailey Jing's eyes. This was the very first time I had ever heard Bailey Jing say so many words. My heart suddenly clenched tightly, and my face flushed bright red with embarrassment. He paused in his tracks when he reached the doorway and spoke with his back turned to me.
You once told me, my lady, that you only liked me.
Those were words I had written to him in my letters, but since he was unwilling to marry me, what was the use of liking him? Once everyone had left, Zhao Zhao finally poked her head out from behind the door.
Miss, do you know who uncovered the truth behind the heir's poisoning?
Does that matter? It must have been important. Otherwise Zhao Zhao wouldn't have brought it up so deliberately. Who was it?
According to Jisoo, it was Lord Bailey who went without sleep for days and nights, even risking offending the imperial family, just to find out that the second prince was behind it. Now, the second prince has been stripped of his title and banished from the capital. That's why you didn't end up as the scapegoat, Mississippi.
As if she felt this wasn't painful enough for me, Zhao Zhao continued to press further.
They came straight from the Prince of Chun's manor today. Miss, you didn't do anything out of line, did you?
I collapsed limply onto the bed and said, utterly devoid of hope, Zhao Zhao, how about we run away? All those things I had said to Yueluo and all those things I had done, he indeed knew about every single one of them. The melon seeds in Zhao Zhao's hand fell to the floor with a soft patter. She stared at me blankly for a moment and only spoke after making sure I wasn't joking.
If we run away, your mother will be sold off. Her health is so fragile. How could she ever survive that kind of torment?
Of course I knew that, but I really couldn't go on with this task anymore. At worst, I'll just go pursue Lord Zhao, the richest man in Hexian. Even though he's fat, has big ears, and is greedy and lustful, at least he treats the wives and concubines in his manner quite well. He gives them money when they want it, and affection when they want it. Even if it won't get my father promoted, giving him some extra money to spend would at least make my concubine mother's life a bit easier. Seeing my pale face, Zhao Zhao began to feel sorry for me too.
If you insist on leaving, Miss, Zhao Zhao will accompany you. Whether it's storming the county magistrate's office to rescue her or finding another way out.
My nose tingled with emotion. Zhao Zhao and I had always depended on each other. Though master and servant in name, we were actually as close as sisters. If something happened to me, neither she nor my concubine mother would have an easy life. The idea of rescuing my concubine mother together had actually crossed our minds before we came to the capital, but her deed of indenture was still in my father's hands. He also had a highly skilled martial artist guarding him, making the chances of stealing the deed slim to none. Even if we luckily managed to escape, we would only live a life of hiding and running. With her chronically ill body, she would probably collapse before even leaving Hexian. If we were caught by my father, the consequences would be even more unimaginable. After a long while, Zhao Zhao sighed and spoke again.
Don't be too discouraged, Mississippi. Let's not force things with Lord Bailey anymore. Look at the heir apparent. What a simple person he is. As long as we seize the opportunity and show our determination, there's still hope to win him back.
I instantly felt helpless. To be honest, my trust in Zhao Zhao as my strategist had already begun to crack.
Actually, Miss Song just sent word to me this morning. She said the autumn hunt is in 10 days, and she can take you along with her then.
The autumn hunt. Hylian Jin, as the heir apparent of Prince Chun, will definitely participate.
Then,
how about, let's try one more time. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, the day of the autumn hunt arrived. Song Qingya arrived as promised, disguised as her maid. I followed her all the way into the hunting grounds.
Yueluo, you must be extra careful. There are many nobles in these hunting grounds. If anything happens, I might not be able to protect you.
Who goes there?
The newcomer wore a noble purple and gold robe. His features were handsome, yet sharp, and a translucent white jade piece hung from his waist, on which the character Een could be faintly seen. During my months in the capital, I had already familiarized myself with all the prominent nobles in the city. The man before me was none other than the current emperor's third son, Helian Chang'en.
Speak.
This servant is from the Song family. Knowing I had run into a powerful figure, I quickly and respectfully curtsied. I thought that once I revealed my identity, they wouldn't waste any more words on a mere maid. But Prince Een suddenly stepped closer to me.
You look somewhat familiar to me. What is your name?
familiar.
I remembered clearly that we had never met before. Just as I was trying to make up a name to get by, footsteps approached from the other side, followed by an angry roar.
Yueluo.
I instinctively shrank my neck. Why does Helian Jin always appear at such inconvenient times?
Jean, do you know this girl?
Do you know him? I know her all too well. Miss Li and I are incredibly close. Chang'en, I have some private matters to handle. Go to the hunting grounds and wait for me first.
Very well. To think such a beautiful girl is so deeply devoted to you.
Helian Jin paid no attention to his teasing. Without a word, he dragged me into the tent. Meanwhile, I only felt a shiver run down my spine. He must have realized that I was the one who sneaked into the hunting grounds.
Spit it out. What kind of tricks are you trying to play this time?
I tried my best to summon up my emotions, forcing my eyes to turn red with tears. Heir apparent, I came here to find you. Hellion Jean stared at my reddened eyes, and most of his anger instantly dissipated. The hand he originally wanted to fling away was also silently pulled back, yet he still spoke stubbornly.
Previously, I merely found the way you chased after Jing to be an eyesore, so I said a few words to you. There was no need for you to risk your own safety just to get back at me, was there? I even thought.
Thought what? I widened my eyes, waiting for him to finish his sentence, but he suddenly fell silent, as if whatever came next was something too embarrassing to say. Forget it.
It just so happens that Bailey Jing is also here today. Are you looking for him? Out of the goodness of my heart, I will take you to him.
I am not going.
Why not?
I looked directly into his eyes and spoke. Heir apparent, I told you. The only one I like is you. A suspicious blush crept onto Hellion Jin's face.
Trying to lie to me again? Do you think I didn't hear what Jisoo said that day? Furthermore, the two of you were alone together in a room. If I didn't know that Jing is a man of propriety, who knows what kind of shameful things you two would have done?
I was momentarily stunned. It seemed that after that day, Bailey Jing must have explained what happened in the room to him, undoubtedly clearing his own name completely. Fortunately, I had already anticipated that he would bring this up. I immediately declared my devotion. Heir apparent, everything in the past was all Yueluo's fault. But from this day forward, Yueluo's heart belongs only to you. Whether you are willing to give me another chance or not, Yueluo will have no regrets.
Do you really?
Before he could finish his sentence, a sharp arrow suddenly tore through the tent. Reacting with swift reflexes, he pulled me into his arms with one swift motion, spun around, and pushed me behind the bed to take cover.
My heart leaped violently in my chest.
The Prince of Chun's mansion was a prominent target, wielding immense power, so there were surely many who wished for his downfall. And his only son, Hellion Jean, was his greatest weakness and vulnerability. Last time it was poison. This time it was an assassination attempt. And who knew what it would be next time? I suddenly felt a bit of sympathy for Hellion Jean. He was so unambitious, practically wearing the label of a useless fool on his head. Yet there were still people trying to murder him every single day. It really wasn't easy for him to have survived to this age. It seemed like quite a few people had arrived outside. At this hour, most of the crowd had gone to the hunting grounds, so rescue probably wouldn't arrive anytime soon.
Don't be afraid. I possess peerless martial arts. I will surely keep you safe.
Although it sounded a bit unreliable, it was unexpectedly comforting. For a brief moment, I felt ashamed of my previous thoughts of wanting to escape.
Don't worry. You're hurt. Just a minor scratch. It won't kill me.
Though he spoke lightly. When had this pampered young heir ever suffered such an injury? His brow was furrowed into a deep frown. It was the first time I had ever seen Hellion Jean look so serious and solemn, and my heart actually skipped a couple of beats at this inappropriate moment.
There are assassins. The heir is still inside. Quick, save the heir.
A sudden commotion came from outside. The guards had finally discovered traces of the assassins. A fierce fight immediately broke out between the two sides. Jin had been poisoned once again. Fortunately, he carried detoxification pills with him, so his life was not in danger. He had merely fallen into a temporary coma. Because my origins were unknown,
I was seized by the guards.
flanked on both sides. I was forced to kneel outside Jin's tent, where Bailey Jing, who was rushing over, happened to run straight into me. He stopped not far away, the emotions in his eyes unclear to me. He probably hadn't expected me to be so persistent that after the previous ordeal, I would come looking for Jin again. Just a few days ago, I had ordered someone to return the hairpin he had gifted me. According to the servant's report, before the item could even be brought inside, Jisoo had thrown it to a beggar on the street. Naturally, I could understand his aversion to me, so I didn't dare say much, only lowering my head to avoid his gaze, trying to minimize my presence as much as possible.
My lord, how should we deal with this girl?
Yet, the guard just had to bring up the sore subject.
What is her offense?
His voice was very soft, as if he weren't surprised at all. The guard explained the whole story, and the scrutinizing gaze on me grew colder and colder. If I hadn't been so thick-skinned, I probably would have been pierced through by that look long ago. Everyone was waiting for his decision, but he calmly raised his hand and pointed at me.
Tie her up and bring her into my tent.
He paused for a moment and continued,
Before the heir wakes up, this matter must not be leaked to the outside. I will deal with her myself.
Yes.
I was bound tightly and escorted into Bailey Jing's tent.
Miss Lee, you are in high spirits.
He was probably being sarcastic with those words, going through so much trouble to sneak into the hunting grounds just to find Jin. Yet, he didn't seem to have any intention of interrogating me at all. I let out a couple of dry laughs, not knowing how to respond. Right at that moment, my stomach
Growled twice.
The atmosphere instantly became even more awkward. I had come in such a hurry today that I hadn't even had breakfast yet. The plate of chestnut cakes placed by Bailey Jing's couch looked exceptionally tempting. Bailey Jing followed my gaze and raised his eyes to ask the maid who had just come in to refill the tea.
Where did these pastries come from?
Replying to young master, the cousin miss sent them over just now. Seeing that you weren't here, she left them here.
The maid answered respectfully and then withdrew. The cousin miss of the Bailey family was Luo Shuiyuan, who had come from Dongzhou to the Bailey Manor to recuperate from an illness. She was the legitimate daughter of Bailey Jing's paternal aunt, and also the most loyal among his many admirers. Logically speaking, she had the advantage of being close to him, but unfortunately, Bailey Jing was away most of the time on official business or meeting friends, and did not often stay in the manor. Unlike my faked illness, Luo Shuiyuan's body was truly delicate and weak, and she rarely had the chance to leave the manor. I had only seen her once. That day, I was staking out Bailey Jing at a tavern, purposely dropping a handkerchief stained with lip balm just as he stepped through the door. To my surprise, Luo Shuiyuan picked it up before him. Even from a floor away, I could feel her urge to pierce me through with her glare. I couldn't hear clearly what she and Bailey Jing were discussing, only sensing that her anger seemed to rise to another level. I have always been good at avoiding direct confrontation, so while they were still downstairs sorting things out, I quietly slipped away. Anyway, I swallowed hard in nervousness and very cautiously asked the man sitting above me, "Can I have a taste?" Bailey Jing's face showed no expression, neither permitting nor refusing, only throwing back a meaningful question.
Are you truly not afraid of death?
If I don't eat this chestnut cake, I might really starve to death here. Heaven knows how long he plans to leave me hanging here. Luo Shuiyuan is so infatuated with Bailey Jing. She probably wouldn't go as far as using poison to harm him, right? But on second thought, given Jin's experiences of being plotted against several times, it's better to be safe than sorry in all things. His fair, delicate skin must feel incredibly smooth to the touch. Those cold, noble eyes are utterly captivating. Just one glance is enough to make one's heart race and cheeks flush. Looking further down are those thin, rosy lips over white teeth. Even though they are only lightly pursed, it uncontrollably brings back memories of his fierce intensity back then. Then look at that hand lightly pinching the page, with its distinct knuckles and fair, slender fingers. Everything about him invites wild, suggestive thoughts. What is going on? I swallowed hard, a sudden sense of guilt rising in my heart, yet I couldn't tear my eyes away from him. Bailey Jing finally deigned to look up from his book and cast his gaze upon me, wearing a look on his face that said, I knew this would happen. No matter how dull-witted I am, I now understand what the situation is. Luo Shuiyuan plays even dirtier than I do. She actually drugged Bailey Jing. However, this scheme was seen through by Bailey Jing, yet he didn't tell me, presumably just waiting to watch me make a fool of myself. I gritted my teeth. What a malicious man. Young Master Bailey, is there an antidote? Looking at my rapidly crumbling sanity, he coldly spat out 2 words.
No.
By the looks of it, he has no intention of helping me. Could you let me go see the heir, young master? Hellion Jean carries pills that can neutralize 100 poisons. At this point, my only option is to go find him. The moment these words left my mouth, I saw his fingers, which were holding the page, turn white from gripping it too hard. That page seemed to have never been turned since I came in. Just as I was about to explain that I meant nothing by it, he had already stood up and walked toward me. A bitter taste gradually spread in my mouth. I quickly swallowed it down, but the bitterness remained thick and lingering. I'll drink it. Does Miss Lee like the heir apparent that much? He didn't feel his behavior just now was despicable at all, and even took the initiative to speak in a sarcastic tone. My face contorted from the bitter taste, because I swallowed too quickly just now. The pill seemed to be stuck in my throat, leaving me no time to discuss this with him. He studied my distorted face, an inexplicable light flickering in his eyes.
These past 10 days, did you ever think of coming to find me even once?
He had left so resolutely that day, looking as if he wanted to draw a clear line between us. What did he mean by these words now? I couldn't figure it out, so I had no choice but to speak up, throwing caution to the wind. What do you mean, young master? Could it be that you want me to be your mistress? Although being a mistress was actually better for me, spending his money, living in his house, not having to serve a mother-in-law, not having to please a future primary wife, and especially not having to fight for his favor with his concubines. How could a reputable family, like the Bailey clan, allow their sons to keep a mistress outside?
I have never had such a thought.
Oh, I see. So not even a mistress is allowed. Please let me go, young master. Being entangled with someone like me might damage your clean reputation. What he said that day, I still remembered very clearly. He forced my face back around again, looking straight into my eyes with a burning gaze.
Miss Lee, you are so heartless. You truly don't soften your heart even a bit. Forget it. The punishment has been dealt. Now, let me make my feelings clear to you.
In the brief pause to catch his breath,
He found a moment to say,
No concubines. No keeping mistresses. Only a wife. And that wife will be you.
Suddenly, a vivid image flashed through my mind. Hellion Jean's face, completely flushed red. From just a single kiss, I snapped back to reality instantly. Bailey Jing was still lost in the heat of passion, completely caught off guard by my sudden awakening, and failed to stop me as I broke free and scrambled away. It was at this exact moment that He Lianjin walked in. I hadn't died from the poison of the aphrodisiac, but I was nearly scared to death by this sudden turn of events. He Lianjin's face was still pale, and my own face probably didn't look much better. Bailey Jing, however, recovered incredibly fast. In the blink of an eye, he put back on that aloof, otherworldly, and detached expression. I met He Lianjin's gaze. As the effects of the drug in my body gradually faded, my mind became clear and sharp again.
Heir apparent, Yueluo.
He Lianjin and I spoke at the exact same time. As we looked at each other, there actually seemed to be a mutual understanding between us. For some reason, a wave of guilt washed over me. A sharp, icy gaze swept over in our direction. Steadying my nerves, I quietly shuffled behind He Lianjin's back. Recalling what Bailey Jing had just said, my heart pounded like a drum, and my feelings were incredibly complicated. My stepmother always said, "Haste makes waste." Looking at the situation now, there was indeed some truth to those words. Right now, I was truly riding a tiger and unable to get off, caught in a complete dilemma. He Lianjin's voice carried a hint of exhaustion and weakness.
Jing, Yueluo did nothing wrong. Give her back to me.
Give her back to you?
Bailey Jing seemed to ponder the meaning of those words seriously. He raised his hand and gently touched the slightly smudged red mark on the corner of his mouth. That was the lipstick mark I had left behind. Fortunately, the lipstick I usually wore was quite light in color. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to cover it up today. He Lianjin's tone seemed to have grown a bit colder.
As for today's matter, I will resolve it myself. And regarding Yueluo, do not interfere with her anymore.
After saying this, without waiting for Bailey Jing to reply, he pulled me by the hand and walked out of the tent. He did not return to his own tent. Instead, he went straight to lead a horse over. I didn't understand what he meant by this, and just froze on the spot.
Yueluo, we are going back to the city.
I was startled and then shook my head resolutely. This place was still a day's journey away from the capital. He was currently having difficulty even standing. If he rode back with me, he would probably collapse just after leaving the camp. He Lianjin's eyes gradually turned red. He tightly gripped my wrist, looking like an abandoned puppy.
Yueluo, you cannot lie to me. You cannot lie to me. Since you said you would only belong to me from now on, then you are not allowed to look at anyone else. Okay.
He looked at me cautiously, and seeing me look back, he subconsciously dodged my gaze again, seemingly afraid of getting an answer he didn't want. My heart suddenly skipped a few beats, and I asked somewhat uncertainly, "Does the heir mean to take me as a concubine?"
Wait. I want to marry you as my wife. My father will agree. Given my status, it is also inconvenient for me to marry a noble lady. Thus, this is exactly what he hopes for.
He spoke somewhat incoherently, but I heard him loud and clear. Marrying a noble lady would only draw more unwanted attention, inviting unnecessary suspicion and danger. But marrying me, who has neither a noble family background nor a powerful backer, would not invite suspicion or bring about fatal disasters. So this was that noble figure's true intention all along. He probably knew long ago that my father was morally corrupt, someone who could be easily controlled with just a few petty benefits. That is why he deliberately set up such a trap that would inevitably have me sent to the capital to lure the heir apparent. No wonder my father suddenly received news claiming I had mistaken the person's identity. He never showed his face from beginning to end, nor did he step in to hinder any of my actions. He likely hoped I would show some competence and capture his son's heart. Receiving no answer from me, Lien Jin suddenly let go of me. Before losing consciousness, he gave his nearby guard one last order.
Send her back to the capital immediately.
I supported him blankly, my heart filled with a chaotic mix of emotions and countless thoughts. I hesitated for 5 whole days before writing down what happened at the hunting grounds in a letter to send back to He County. But before the letter could even reach He County, my father arrived first. My father, he got promoted from a minor magistrate of He County. He leaped to become a capital official, the vice director of the Ministry of Personnel, holding a rank of the 6th grade. He was so ecstatic that he didn't even wait for the rest of the family to join him and rushed to the capital on his own ahead of time. After talking with him through the night, I finally sorted out the sequence of events. He, Lien Zhuijing, who is none other than Prince Jing, the second prince who poisoned Hellion Jean, was stripped of his royal status and banished from the capital. He then traveled all the way south, visiting officials of all ranks along the way, and winning over a significant number of supporters. My father was one of them. Knowing that my father cared only about promotions and wealth, Hellion Zhuijing immediately sent word to his confidants in the capital and promoted him overnight. So much so that after I told him about Bailey Jing and Hellion Jean, he actually told me to give up.
Your father is a man. And I understand men's minds best. Do you really think they like you? They are just after your face. And saying polite words. Do not pay them any mind. They will forget about you in a few days. Prince Jing is of such noble status. Never mind being a concubine. As long as he takes a liking to you, even if he wants you to be a mere bedchamber maid. You must go for me.
My most foolish thought was believing that he was, after all, my father, and might still hold a shred of conscience for me. Since he is so heartless and unjust, then he cannot blame me for turning my back on my own family. What if your daughter refuses to go?
Refuses?
My father widened his snobbish, petty eyes.
If you do not go, how can Prince Jing trust me? If your father didn't have only you as a daughter, I wouldn't make things so difficult for you. Yueluo, we must take the long view. If you marry either of them, you will be a noble lady at most. But Prince Jing is different. Although he is demoted for now, he will return to the capital sooner or later if he ascends the throne in the future. And you work a little harder. You might even become an imperial consort. Even if he has no feelings for you, glory and wealth will still be yours.
Good. We shall set this matter aside for now. Where is my mother? My father's expression shifted slightly. He picked up his teacup, took a sip, and only then slowly drew a letter from his robe.
She is doing very well. Look. I even had her write a letter to you.
The letter was indeed in my mother's own handwriting. Every single word was filled with care and longing, telling me not to worry about her. She didn't know I had come to the capital, much less what I was doing here. My father had lied to her, saying I had contracted an epidemic and had been sent to a temple to recuperate. He wouldn't even let me write a single letter back. With this promotion and move to the capital, my father certainly wouldn't bring her along either. Hellion Zhuijing had not returned to the capital, but my father forbade me from having any further contact with Hellion Jean and Bailey Jing. He claimed to the public that I had fallen gravely ill and could not take a single step out of my room. He happily went to assume his new post, while I swallowed my anger and moved into the newly purchased estate. On the day the first madam arrived, she hired 20 maids in a single day, had several sets of jewelry made at Fuchin Pavilion, and had many new clothes tailored. It was as if she was terrified people wouldn't know my father had taken bribes in E County. Acting in such an extravagant and high-profile manner, she would brag to anyone she met about now being the wife of a vice director. On the day of the promotion banquet, many guests came to the manor. I was ordered to be locked in my own room, forbidden to go anywhere. Zhao Zhao, on the other hand, was dragged off to do hard labor, using the opportunity to gather some news for me. Outside, the voices bubbled and surged, bustling with extraordinary excitement. I was the only one keeping watch over an empty room, feeling doubly lonely and desolate. I sat alone in the room, playing chess against myself. I never expected that the grand young Master Bailey would actually take advantage of the crowd and chaos in the manor to break into a young lady's bedchamber at night. Nor did I expect that he would arrive even faster than Hellion Jean. Just as I was about to speak, he let go of me. A cold sensation brushed my palm, and an object was left there. It was the hairpin I had sent someone to return.
This is the hairpin my father specially commissioned Fuchin Pavilion to make for my mother when she married into the family. Since Miss Lee accepted it back then there is no reason to return it.
You. Why did you? To think this was actually such a precious object, but I did not understand. In a mere 8 months, how could Bailey Jing come to value me so highly? He seemed to read my doubts and said as if to himself,
When I was 16, I once visited He County.
That was 4 years ago, the very year my father saved Prince Chun. The girl you helped escape back then
Is now married into a good family. She has both a son and a daughter and a loving husband.
I stared at him in blank astonishment. A long-buried memory became clear. In the winter 4 years ago, my father brought back another girl who had been sold by her family. I secretly let her go. When my father found out, he made me kneel in the courtyard and whipped me severely 15 times. He forbade me from wearing warm clothes and refused to let anyone visit me. But when I froze and fainted in the courtyard and later woke up, I was covered with a thick, dark black cloak. My heart gave a sudden thump. I asked tentatively, "That cloak was yours?" Bailey Jing nodded. The tension in his brow softened, as if a great weight had been lifted, finally revealing the feelings he had harbored for so long. I had always thought that cloak was sent by my father, and so I always believed he still held a shred of affection for me. I didn't expect that it was just my wishful thinking again. So, Bailey Jing knew from the very beginning that I had approached him with ulterior motives. No wonder Lord Bailey, who never allowed any woman near him, always let me find a way in. Since that was the case, the schemes I had planned before would probably be useless now. Young Master Bailey, my father.
I know everything.
I remained silent, just as I thought. My so-called father thought he had kept his actions so well hidden, but I'm afraid the powerful and influential in the capital had long known how he obtained his post as vice director. By following the clues, they could naturally find out my original purpose for coming to the capital.
Miss Lee, Prince Jing is also quite handsome.
I shook my head, staring at him with burning intensity. Even so, I don't want him. He asked again in a low, quiet tone.
If the one who came tonight were Hellion Jean, would you do the same, Miss Lee?
Well, not necessarily. Hellion Jean is sincere by nature, and I would hate to deceive him. But the one who came tonight is you. Before he could say anything more, I took the initiative to wrap myself around him, boldly taking advantage of the moment. Are you willing to help me, young master? He did not answer. Instead, he lowered his head and pressed down with a deep kiss. A month later, my father's wishful thinking fell completely flat. Hellion Zhuijing never made it back to the capital. He died in a pavilion in Jiangnan. Upon hearing the tragic news, the emperor fell gravely ill. Yet he did not order an investigation into the killer. Those who originally stood by Prince Jing's side all turned to ally themselves with Hellion Jean because of the first mistress's extravagant and high-profile lifestyle. The Leaf family suddenly came under thorough investigation. My father's household was thrown into utter chaos by the time he thought to turn back and use my concubine mother's life to threaten me again, demanding that I seduce Bailey Jing and Hellion Jean. Zhao Zhao and I had already taken my mother's indenture contract and fled the capital overnight. No matter how fast his letters could travel, they could not outrun my horse's hooves. After picking up my mother from the old Li family estate, we headed all the way south
to Jiangnan.
My concubine mother said she wanted to see the sea in Qingzhou of Jiangnan. Once we arrived in Qingzhou, we met a gentle-looking schoolteacher there. I had once seen his likeness in a painting inside my concubine mother's treasured box. He softly called out her name.
Sonia.
My concubine mother shed many tears before she could finally call out his name. Using the money my father had given me, I bought a courtyard residence in Qingzhou. I also set up an embroidery workshop for my concubine mother to manage and opened a small shop for Zhao Zhao, specializing in solving people's relationship troubles. Business turned out to be incredibly bustling. As for me, I began a leisurely life of living off my savings. Later, I heard that my father had been investigated and punished for bribery. Not only was there no hope of promotion, but he couldn't even keep his position as county magistrate.
Now,
he has been exiled to the borderlands and become a displaced vagrant. I was in high spirits. I used the funds he had originally given me to host several tables of banquets at a tavern. After eating and drinking our fill, it just so happened that a drizzling rain began to fall outside the window. I left Zhao Zhao behind to clean up the aftermath. I'll leave this place to you, while I held an umbrella alone, heading to the embroidery workshop to pick up my concubine mother and go home. To my surprise, I actually ran into Bailey Jing on the way. He seemed to have come in a great hurry, his temples still carrying the weariness of travel. He just stood there in the fine drizzle, looking at me from a distance.
Miss Li, it is time to go back.
Before leaving the capital, I had promised him that once my concubine mother was settled, I would return. He had stolen my concubine mother's deed of sale for me and held back my father's fury. I wanted her and had Jisoo escort me back to He County in a rush. But after picking up my aunt, Zhao Zhao, and I ditched Jisoo. I admit, at the time, I only wanted to use him to rescue my aunt. I spun my umbrella a few times until the water droplets from the edge flew right onto his chest. Only then did I reply, completely in the wrong yet utterly shameless, "What if? I don't want to go back."
There is no what if.
I was just about to tease him some more, but he suddenly looked behind me and reached out to pull me away. A sharp arrow shot right between the two of us, just barely blocking Bailey Jing's outstretched hand. Startled, I whipped my head around to look. There, sitting atop a tall horse, was a high-spirited young man, wild and untamed, with eyes burning bright. With his slender hands, he gracefully notched another arrow, pointing it straight at Bailey Jing behind me.
Yueluo, come over to this prince.
Before I could even speak, the person behind me had already taken my hand. Hellion Jean's grip on his bow tightened, and I watched as his eyes gradually turned red. Quietly, I slipped my hand out of that broad, warm palm. He let out a cold laugh, looking contemptuously at the person behind me.
Bailey Jing, you didn't actually tell her that you were the one who stole that deed, did you?
Huh, was it not him? I looked back. Bailey Jing pressed his lips tightly together, saying nothing. Bailey Jing didn't know martial arts, but Hellion Jean did. I took 2 steps back, utterly shocked. Hellion Jean continued.
If you hadn't gathered those 50 people that night, do you really think you would have been the first to enter the Li Manor?
I took another 2 steps back. My mind was in a complete whirlwind. I still have to pick up my aunt for dinner. Let's chat next time. With that said, I turned around and ran.
Miss Li.
I can't hear you. I can't hear anything. Bailey Jing's side story. When I was 16, I accompanied Prince Chun to Jiangnan for disaster relief. The third prince, Helian Changyin, was also with us. On our way back to the capital, while passing through He County in Luozhou, we were ambushed by assassins. Prince Chun was separated from us because of this. It was during that time that I met Yueluo.
Third Prince, young Master Bailey. Someone spotted Prince Chun's whereabouts at the county magistrate's estate.
Jing, I will go receive Prince Chun. You go keep watch outside the county magistrate's estate.
The back door of the county magistrate's estate opened, and an elegant, ethereal figure helped a girl dressed as a maidservant into a carriage. She seemed to sense my presence. For some reason, I panicked for a moment and quickly hid behind a tree. Her eyes were incredibly beautiful, as if they held a pool of spring water. When she looked up, her gaze was full of tenderness. That soft look made it hard not to want to steal another glance. No wonder, at only 13 years of age, her name had already spread throughout Luozhou. She was whipped and forced to kneel in the courtyard. 2 days later, by then, Prince Chun had already returned to the post house. Magistrate Li no longer had to keep up pretenses and punished her that very night.
I heard Magistrate Li's daughter secretly let go the girl he had bought. So she was severely punished. Do you want to go take a look?
Good. Inside the courtyard of the county magistrate's estate, she was like a delicate little white flower in spring. Yet at this moment, in this biting cold winter, she bloomed with stubborn defiance. Until the very last moment, she showed no intention of bowing her head at all.
Jing, we've been watching for half an hour. Let's go back.
I'm going back to take a look. The moonlight spilled across her, shone upon her face, which was as pale as deep winter snow, looking as though it were covered in a thin layer of ice, as if it would shatter at the slightest touch. I untied my cloak and gently draped it over her. I wanted to carry her to a warmer place, but when my fingertips touched her slender back, I suddenly drew them back. Such behavior would truly violate propriety. If she found out, she would surely be angry.
A little white flower born in the countryside could actually make our aloof young Master Bailey disregard all propriety and scale a wall to break in. Tisk, tsk, tsk. What a rare marvel.
After that night, we returned to the capital. I thought our paths would never cross again. But in the spring 4 years later, I met her once more. At the spring banquet, that figure stood quietly among the blooming Chinese roses, yet she was even more radiant and beautiful than those exquisite flowers. Everything around her seemed to pale in comparison. Some young noblemen cast admiring glances at her, and some young men sent servants to ask for her name. She shrank back cautiously into that corner, unaware of just how dazzling she was. For the daughter of a 7th-rank county magistrate to appear at the spring feast in the capital was already against protocol. In the guest list I had originally drawn up, her name was not on it either. I had Jisoo go and investigate the matter thoroughly. Have you investigated everything clearly?
Replying to young master, Miss Li came along with the young lady of the Song family. To the public, they claimed she fell ill, and Magistrate Li specially sent her to the capital to seek a famous physician.
Looking at the medical book in my hand, I felt a bit amused. She seemed delicate and weak, but in truth, she ate and slept well, without the slightest trace of illness on her. Suddenly, I felt a desire to go and see her. That day, Jean wanted to go horse racing, so I accompanied him to the outskirts. When something urgent came up on the way, I switched to a carriage to return to the city, only to unexpectedly run into her riding toward me on horseback. Dressed in simple, elegant, and gentle attire, she looked so free and high-spirited on horseback. I had the coachman turn the carriage around, thinking to myself that it wouldn't hurt to handle that matter a bit later. By the time I returned to the tea house where Jean was, she was being chased by a group of local thugs, and burst inside with a panicked look on her face. Before I could even stand up, Jean beside me had already caught her. Her gaze swept around the room, and finally landed on me. Her eyes were filled with such softness that even the bright spring light paled in comparison. After that day, she began to appear frequently by my side, always pretending they were accidental encounters. A dropped handkerchief in a restaurant, a chance meeting while boating on Tingyin Lake, and at a gathering of scholars. The character Jing, she had written seemingly by accident. In truth, she didn't need to do any of this at all. I already liked her.
Tisk, TSK. You are simply lusting after this girl's beauty.
Perhaps I was. Other than her, I truly had never met another girl who caught my eye so perfectly.
Side story, Jean. I, the heir, have seen countless beautiful women, but it is my first time seeing a woman like Yueluo, who has such a massive contrast in her personality. The day we first met, it wasn't exactly pleasant. She was running for her life, being chased by someone. She was incredibly beautiful. That charming face of hers was like fragile white porcelain. When she threw herself onto me, she felt so soft, like a little kitten, and she carried a sweet, fruity scent. I swallowed hard, about to ask if she was hurt. Are you on? But she looked up, her gaze passing right over me, to look at Jing. Jing and I grew up together. He is 2 years older than me. Ever since he was 12, I've seen countless girls fall head over heels for him. This time was no exception. Forget it. I pushed her toward Jing, while I, all by myself, beat those pursuing thugs to a pulp. After that day, whenever Jing and I were together, we would always run into her by chance. She claimed it was a coincidence, but anyone with eyes could see she was coming specifically to wait for Jing. After all, what kind of coincidence allows you to coincidentally meet outside a latrine?
What a coincidence.
In front of Jing, she was always so gentle, sweet, and full of smiles. I, too, had always thought that she was just that kind of woman, until that day when I went to the brothel again and ran into a family trying to sell their daughter there. She pointed right at their noses and gave them a tongue lashing. Without using a single curse word, she managed to insult 18 generations of their ancestors. Then she pulled out a 100-tael banknote, exchanged all of it with me for loose silver, and threw it all right into that family's faces. Seeing the money, that family grew greedy. They had no choice but to swallow their anger after being scolded, and obediently handed their daughter over to her. It turned out that her behavior in front of Jing was all an act just to win his affection. The kind of girl Jing likes should be the gentle and virtuous type. I felt I could help him resolve this trouble, so he wouldn't regret it in the future. So, the next time I saw her, I started speaking to her with sarcasm. She silently clenched her fists, but put on an innocent, clueless look on her face, and hid behind Jing. Who would have thought that afterward, she would actually carry a bucket of slops and dump it all into my carriage? And as luck would have it, I caught her red-handed. Not only did she show no remorse, she even had the audacity to accuse me of being overly extravagant, telling me not to ride in a carriage next time I go out, but to ride in a donkey cart instead. She even said that since I look like a donkey anyway, we would make a perfect match. I was actually amused by her anger. I planned to replace my carriage next time I went out with a prized steed sent as tribute from the grasslands, just to infuriate her. Sigh. But I also found her behavior quite adorable. When she bickered with me, she would lecture me on my faults with absolute seriousness. Her lovely little face would flush with anger, pouting so cutely, and those beautiful eyes of hers, for once, were fixed solely on me, making my heart feel warm and racing. No one in the world knows that Tingxue Pavilion is actually my property. That night, she was stealthily keeping watch from the tea house opposite. An attendant from the pavilion ran over to report to me.
Heir apparent, we have a situation. A young lady is stealthily keeping watch in front of Tingxue Pavilion.
I had no choice but to crawl out of my warm bed to see what kind of trouble she was trying to stir up again. To my surprise, she climbed right into my carriage. Gone was her usual wariness. Like a kitten guarding its food whenever she saw me. She fell into my arms, her cheeks flushed with nervousness, and she rambled on and on to me. As soon as I got nervous, the old poison in my body flared up. While I was unconscious, I vaguely felt like she slapped me twice. How outrageous. But speaking of which, I treated Bailey Jing as a brother, yet he turned around and stabbed me in the back. We had agreed to compete fairly. At the time, Yueluo's maid sent me a message demanding to see me, but just as I arrived outside the Li Manor, dozens of people suddenly appeared out of nowhere. They refused to let me enter the Li Manor no matter what. I had no choice but to roll up my sleeves and fight them. After fighting for 2 whole hours, I finally learned from a short, chubby guy. We were hired by Lord Bailey. These people were all brought in by Bailey Jing, and he even high-mindedly claimed it was to stop me from breaking into a private residence at night, lest I make a grave mistake. In the upper left corner of the panel, Bailey Jing, who always presents himself as a proper, upright gentleman, took advantage of me being held up to sneak into Yueluo's bedchamber himself. I decided then and there to cut ties with him and end our years of brotherhood. But, he said, Yueluo had asked him to steal her aunt's indenture contract. He went, and he did steal it, but he got beaten up for it. Not only that, he also helped Yueluo escape the capital. By the time I found out, Jisoo had already returned to the capital and informed me the news that they had lost her. Furious, I got into a fight with Jisoo. I barely won. Jing started avoiding me. I didn't even need to think to know. He must be planning to go look for Yueluo. So I followed him all the way to Qingzhou. My luck was a bit better than his. I ran into Yueluo's maid, Zhao Zhao, first. From Zhao Zhao, I learned the truth about everything. It turned out the person Yueluo wanted to see that night, it was I. I also learned that Bailey Jing had actually taken all the credit for stealing the indenture contract. I knew it. Bringing that bow and arrow from the capital was not in vain. I will definitely make Bailey Jing realize who the older brother is and who the younger brother is. I will also let Yueluo know who the truly reliable one is.